Welcome to another episode of The InEVitable. I'm your host, Ed Lowe. This is Johnny Lieberman.
Hi there.
This is a video podcast on the future of mobility, future of the car, where are we going, how are we going to get there when cars have no steering wheels, how are we going to charge them, will we need to charge them as regularly if the battery technology issues are solved and we have batteries that can go 300, 400, 500, maybe even 600 or 700 miles on a single charge
or more. And yeah, I mean, that's the thing. If you boil down but almost every anti-EV argument, it just comes down to range. So
Right.
What
if range no longer was an issue? Well, today we are talking to one of the most brilliant people on the forefront of sort of solving this issue. Is a man by the name of Mujeeb Ijaz. He is the founder and CEO of a company called Our Next Energy. That's Our Next Energy. This is a battery manufacturer based in Michigan. And this guy's got a really interesting background in automotive, in battery development.
And he just might change the world.
Maybe. He and his company have some very interesting battery technology, battery chemistry. Doesn't involve the usual suspects when you talk about the current state of EV batteries. Lithium, yes, but not cobalt. There are different elements involved, iron phosphate.
But more importantly, it's like double the range that you would get from a normal modern car battery.
In a different way, and very soon to market with a major German auto manufacturer that starts with B. And we're going to talk to him.
Let's talk to him.
So Mujeeb Ijaz, founder of Our Next Energy. Here we go.
All right. Mujeeb, good to have you here.
Fantastic to be with you. Thank you.
So let's just, right off the bat, let's get into it. Meaning, I first became aware of you when you put a different kind of battery into a Tesla Model S, and the range went from 300 or whatever it was to like over 700. Tell us about that.
Yeah, when we founded the company, we had an idea, and I've driven electric vehicles for 15 years. I've experienced a lot of different examples where range has just not been enough.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my founding principles is that we're not close on range. We need to double the range of an EV for these kinds of products to be acceptable to the mass markets, meaning everyone can own an electric car as their only car, not a third car. Mm. And so in that idea of doubling range, we came up with a new architecture for battery, one battery that deals with everyday driving, very conventional chemistry and very robust. A second battery that only has to come into play with a long distance drive. And that second battery can be made with a different chemistry, does not have to have everyday durability, and it doesn't need the same power level. And in that context, we decided we needed something to kind of describe to the market that we cared and we were interested in a much different range story for electric car. So instead of trying to convince an automotive company on paper that we could do something, we assembled our team. We founded the company in July of 2020. By around June of 21, we were building the first battery packs for this type of application. And then we decided, let's go ahead and just drive this vehicle on our own and not do it with an OEM. Just take the battery out of a car that we owned. It was purchased sort of on the private market. And we then decided that the state of Michigan has this very unique story around its beauty in the north, but a lot of charging anxieties around getting to charging stations prevent people from ever taking an electric car to the northern peninsula. You can't find a charging station.
You mean the upper peninsula?
The upper peninsula.
The UP.
The UP. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Thank you.
Yes.
As a Michigander, people are going to be like, dude, you're not from Michigan. And so anyway, we decided, let's take this journey in winter and let's see what we can do in terms of range. And so we drove to the upper peninsula, and on a single charge, we managed 752 miles.
Wow.
On the way back, we realized we would get back to our lab with way more range than we expected. And so then we decided to detour to Lansing, and then we went to Ann Arbor, and then we went to Detroit, and we went downtown, and then drove around a bit. And it was kind of remarkable because I wasn't driving the car. One of the engineers on my team was driving the car, but I was following it in a gasoline vehicle, and, we were like taking stats and figuring out all the, forensics of the drive. And in that, we had to pull off to get gas.
Yeah.
And then later, we pulled off again. And actually, second time I pulled off, I was sitting there refueling the gasoline chase car. And I was actually really profoundly moved by that moment because I was the first time as an engineer in an electric vehicle for 32 years that I've seen an electric car outperform in every aspect a gasoline vehicle to such a degree that it put to shame the range of a gasoline vehicle.
And can I ask what kind of gas vehicle you were driving?
I think it was a van. It might have been like, a typical 9-passenger type of white
Okay,
van.
like
I don't
a
know.
transit or something.
Like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But
Wait, so
that's
what was it?
wild.
What was the total range you ended up with?
752 miles. Yeah.
Okay.
So
And
that's
like the engineer was driving was like normal, like he wasn't like hypermiling 50 miles.
Well, no, I would say that we did have a very long discussion about what's the range going to be with respect to what is the condition, because that matters on an electric car.
Right.
So what we did is we looked at the EPA rated range of a Tesla. Then we looked at modeling the steady state driving speed that would emulate that EPA behavior. So if the EPA rated range was, 320 miles, at what speed do you need to drive to assure that
to
you get
mimic
that?
that.
Yeah. And in wintertime, at the speed, we were at 55 miles an hour, wintertime conditions would emulate the rated range of that vehicle.
Okay.
And as we looked at also the amount of energy that we put on, we actually doubled the amount of energy on board. We definitely expected this to do better than, double or better, at least double what the range rated was.
So you were thinking it would do 640.
Exactly.
And you did 752.
752. And we drove it till it wouldn't drive anymore, meaning that we did take the battery all the way to zero as well, a little beyond
Sure.
what normal automotive would do for, but nevertheless,
still,
the goal.
you did
Yeah,
it.
That's right.
Was a driver wearing a astronaut diaper or something like?
That was a good discussion. The driver and the chase car didn't want to stop, and we're like, guys, you need to eat, and they're like, well, tell you what, we'll pull over, and you guys can give us some food. And yes, they did actually go out to the bathroom at one point.
All right.
But it was a great drive, and it changed profoundly everyone's understanding of what our company stood for. Mainly what I wanted is wanted the conversation to start in the electric vehicle community of what's the right range level, because I had talked with automotive companies and even executives, and the topic of like that much range, like I was actually touting a production product that would do 600 miles on a single charge, well designed for all automotive conditions. And I got the question at one point, why would you need so much range in an electric vehicle? And that like maybe reflects carefully why we did that event. Is we wanted to start a conversation, and we did. We started the conversation of, is that range going to actually be interesting to the market? Well, so many people poured out. That's the kind of electric car that I would buy. In other words, immediately that was the reaction we got.
I mean, look, we've never met before, but I reference your company almost constantly when people are like, "There's no way I couldn't do it." I'm like, "Do you understand that the technology exists? It's going to be on the market soon, but like, it's more than you could ever drive in a day. It's more than you can get out of a gas car. Like, every one of your arguments falls apart in the face of being able to do, and that's in a a Model S. Like, if you get this down to a Model 3 size vehicle or smaller, it's
Lighter.
I don't know, yeah, lighter. It's game changing.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you something. Because before you mentioned the numbers of like 600 and then you ended up with 750 something. As an engineer, what is the ideal?
Yeah.
What is the ideal range for an EV? Would you say like there's I think what we can and should do practically, but I think you're kind of talking about sort of psychologically what's going to get potential buyers over the hump.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because I think that is the thesis of our company. We built the company around the premise of adoption. We want to, in a way, enable that every vehicle could be an electric vehicle because there's no hesitation to buy. When I joined Ford Motor Company in '92, we had this topic in California called the ZEV mandate.
Mm-hmm.
The ZEV mandate in '98 was 2% of cars sold by OEMs would be electric. And the premise in the auto industry at that time when I joined was 100 miles of range would more than cover the 42-mile average that Americans needed every day, and that you're charging every night. So one of our sort of leaders at Ford would say, that's 700 miles a week. and therefore it's a different premise than a normal gasoline vehicle because they're charging at home. And we went on that premise for some time until the first vehicles were made by others. At the time, it was Honda EV Plus that offered a EV Plus purpose built, more than 100 miles range, and they even subsidized it to where it was cheap enough to buy like any other vehicle, even including insurance. But the market didn't exist. And so what we started realizing is it is possible to invest 8, 9, 10 years in the auto industry on a premise that is not so thoroughly vetted that it has like real understanding of the market behavior and adoption. So I've always been skeptical whenever I hear that, say, 300 miles is enough. I'm still skeptical because I went through an experience where I almost like maybe I got disillusioned that I was working on this premise that turned out to be incorrect for so many years of my career. And so when I started thinking about the 300-mile journey of every EV's targeting about that number, I looked at my own experiences. I went from the Bay Area. I lived in Los Altos Hills, and I went to Lake Tahoe with my family one 4th of July summer. And in that trip, I experienced 3 failures of range. First, I couldn't make it to Tahoe, even though it was less than 300 miles, because that last hill was so long and arduous that it just didn't have the range.
Right.
I was driving a Tesla at the time. So I actually had a problem getting to the first destination, had to Uber the rest of it, leave the car, and then go deal with it later on the next day. The second experience was coming back. And on that journey coming back, I knew I was going to charge because, well, I needed to. The charging stations were actually full because it was 4th of July weekend.
And that's the real
problem. And it was 2 hours of sitting there waiting, and like the kids are in the back seat, like, thumbs up, Dad. These electric cars are great. And I'm like, yeah, that's not really that great, right? And it's like my thesis is I want to get to a future which is fully electrified.
Right.
And therefore, I had my own personal experiences. Then I started modeling and simulating, okay, what is going to happen when the American market receives the first trucks? Right. They're going to love trucks because that is the trucks and SUVs market of the world.
We love
65%. And in trucks and SUVs, you expect, first of all, you expect to be able to climb hills. You expect to be able to tow. And you also expect and definitely do 80 miles per hour. That's a new thing.
Yep.
The whole EPA range rating effort was so, I guess, rooted in the 55 mile per hour.
Nixon era.
Exactly.
1975.
That hasn't kept up. And EVs have this physics topic that when you get to cold temperature, you do 80 miles per hour, you will lose 50% of your range.
Right.
And that 50% is where we came up with double.
Right.
We said, okay, if the thesis is you're promising a no problem trip at 300 plus miles, then let's just deliver that with all the noise factors considered. If you want to tow, if you want to go in low temperature. So I'm not really advocating that you need 600 miles. I really don't think that's the necessary design point. It's that you need to be able to count on that 5 to 6 hour journey, which is a regional trip where it's a hassle. Like, San Francisco to LA is the example trip where you debate, do I want to drive or do I want to fly?
Right.
Flying's a pain in the neck.
Yep.
And driving's a pain in the neck. But nevertheless, when you look at it door to door, sometimes you're just willing to drive, but you don't want to stop 2-3 times.
Right.
And so, okay, the next thing that I'll tell you about range.
Well, you want to be able to reliably stop. Because I think Ed and I both looked at each other when you said the chargers were full, the kids are going crazy. Because I think if you have an electric vehicle, you've had that like I go from LA to Big Bear, which isn't that far, but because it's a huge uphill.
Yeah.
I try to charge at the bottom of the hill. And, I remember, one time I got there, plugged into the 350 kilowatt charger, and it's coming out at like 29 kilowatts.
Yeah.
That's
true.
Plug into the one next to it, it's coming out at 29 kilowatts.
Yeah.
Or I just did over the holidays. I went from 2 totally small towns no one's ever heard of in California, Los Angeles to Sacramento. And the chargers were either all broken or they were full or it was raining and it just sucked. And it's just like, who wants to deal with this? So what I really love about what you said is, and this is like the brain scrambling part, is that everybody who's talking about range or selling a vehicle right now, they're selling an EV and they're touting range. They are touting sort of best case lab scenario, warm weather, like
at 55.
At 55.
Not real world.
You're going, no. Let's keep all the noise in the system.
Yeah.
And we're going to go deep on this because you already covered cold weather, you covered
towing,
trucks,
towing,
you talked about towing. You used to work at Ford. F-150 Lightning is our current truck of the year. So I want to talk a little bit about that. But I want to go back just to this original Tesla piece you did. and give you an opportunity to talk about the products, because so our Next Energy One is the company.
Yeah.
You have, and you reference them. This is great. Your intro was perfect. You're like, we developed a battery product that was sort of traditional. That's your Aries line.
Yes.
Okay, so that's
LFP,
which is, for you chemistry nerds, the L is for lithium, the F is for iron, the P is for phosphate. Okay,
That's
so we
correct.
call them LFP. And then your second battery series, there's Aries 2, right? Which is
Okay, so Aries is always LFP, but the first one is for commercial truck.
okay.
The Aries 2 is for automotive. Think
Okay.
of that as your passenger cars.
Okay.
The Aries 1 and Aries 2 refer to our desire to go to market fast for commercial truck first.
Okay.
And then the second market, which is longer to get to, is the automotive. with
What do you
LFP.
consider a commercial truck?
Oh, think of it as like a delivery vehicle.
Okay.
It could be a package delivery, or it could be a bus,
Right.
a school bus,
Right.
things like that.
Okay, so
Yeah.
like a Amazon truck that's not a
Example.
Rivian, or even if it is a Rivian.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the kind of vehicle, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you got your Gemini
Yes.
series, which is the anode-less. Is that
Yeah.
right? Which
Yeah.
I'm terrible at chemistry, so this is going to be a challenge for me. Do you want to explain that one?
Of course, yeah. So the idea that we came up with in Gemini, and starting the company, double the range, but then I also thought the chemistries should not be the kinds of chemistry that can lead to thermal runaway. Because the risk of fire, and this is my like laundry list of things that can go wrong if the whole world of electric vehicle is adopting batteries. What are the problems that are going to happen? First, you need to make sure you deal with range. Second, you need to write chemistry so that you're avoiding supply chain constraints, but also you need to avoid thermal runaway.
Thermal runaway is the best, for you listening at home, it's one of the best euphemisms out there, period, full stop. Thermal runaway equals fire.
Fire.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
fire.
yeah.
Yeah. Battery engineers are traditionally conditioned not to say the word
fire.
fire. We're like, no, you can't say fire, but you
Right.
can say thermal
Thermal
runaway.
runaway.
Yeah.
It's like 18 more letters
Yeah,
than you
exactly.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is that when you think about the ingredients of a fire, you have to have a fuel, but you need
Fuel.
oxygen, and you need something to ignite it or start it. Well, oxygen in the case of a nickel cobalt chemistry comes from within the chemistry. It's like nickel, cobalt, manganese, or aluminum plus oxygen. That's also embedded. It's a big percentage of what's holding the whole thing together. When you said phosphate, lithium iron phosphate doesn't have oxygen. It's bound up in a phosphate, therefore it doesn't release oxygen. That's why it doesn't have the same reason to go into a fire or thermal runaway. So we decided in the second instance of the company mission to avoid certain chemistries that were associated with nickel cobalt. The third was, let's develop this U.S. supply chain to localize the production of batteries and create an easy path to market. So Gemini, as we worked 4 months, and you might say it was kind of a long 4 months because I did leave my job, and then I had thought, well, okay, we don't have an idea on doubling range without nickel cobalt. And I certainly, actually, I started regretting the fact that that was such an ambitious goal that maybe we wouldn't be able to realize it. In fact, I learned something important as an entrepreneur that I'll give any entrepreneur out there is write down your vision, mission, goal, and stick to it. Because actually the human mind is good at solving a really tough problem, but only after you've run out of easy ways to do it. Meaning that you have to put yourself in a condition where you're convinced that you can achieve a disruption, and the only way to get there is to do it with those levels of constraints. And we came up with an idea that was completely orthogonal, different than all of the other battery companies that were working in the time, which is divide the problem simply into two parts. One part that realizes we only drive 150 miles 99% of the time.
Right.
That last 1 percentile, which is what we've been talking about, that long road trip, is 1 percentile, or let's call it 4 times a year.
But it affects 100% of the thinking.
Exactly.
Yes.
100% of thinking.
Yes.
So no one's going to buy the 150-mile EV, but people are going to buy that 600-mile EV way faster.
Sure. It's like having a big 4x4 that can go off-road. You're never going to use it.
Yes.
But you want it.
But you got to have it. Yeah.
That's right.
I
And
need
so-
a 3-row SUV. Why? My mother-in-law visits once a year.
Yeah.
That's why you're going to buy
Exactly.
a car? Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And then the people say, well, rent the car when you need that. And you're like, well, no, it's my car.
Yeah.
So in some ways, we took advantage of that truth as you described it as well. And in the context of this, I also had a background in investing in companies as a leader at A123 and being, in the category of working with startups that have new chemistries. A startup will usually attract investment from either Department of Energy, ARPA-E, or investors when they've achieved something remarkable in battery, which mostly people look for better energy density. That's the flag that when you raise it the highest, people are like, I want to invest in that.
Right.
But then there's the next step that comes, which is, okay, where's your market? If you say automotive, then the automotive market has a long list of requirements. And it's not like you can pick and choose the requirements. You have to meet all of them.
Right.
So they want you to go to low temperature. They want you to go to fast charging. They want you to do peak power. Durability has to be, 3,000 cycles of full discharge and many, many requirements.
No thermal runaways.
No thermal runaways, exactly.
Period.
And so as the topic of meeting automotive requirements has plagued the startups that invest in new chemistries, they have a problem of time. It can take like 7 years to meet all requirements or even more. Sometimes you never meet all the requirements. And then a great technology can just die on the vine, having achieved something. Well, when I looked at that, a lot of chemistries parked themselves at around 200 cycles. That was kind of the starting line for a chemistry to write a white paper to say I'm something. And we decided, let's see if we can make that type of technology work as a range extender and not a primary battery.
Right.
So think of it this way. I put 2 batteries in a vehicle, one that's doing everyday driving. Then every once in a while, let's call it 4 to 10 times a year, you need a long distance trip. And that has to have a high enough density that it's overcoming the fact that you need a lot more range. With a low power supply, you can accomplish, basically a lot of functional capability. So I looked at 2 requirements, the lifetime and then the power. And we decided let's lower the lifetime by 90% and lower the requirement for power by 90%. And both of those reductions in power and life resulted in new chemistries being available. And those chemistries were already known. They were already on the bookshelf. Many companies had already researched a great way to make a lousy battery.
So in other words, it seemed like a dead end.
It seemed like a dead end.
Unless
They
you-
passed on it.
Unless you combined it with something else.
That's right.
So just functionally, let's say I had. So that's what Gemini is. So.
Yeah.
Well, and why is it Gemini? This is clever, right? Because
Yeah.
I was thinking, like,
2 in 1.
did you name them after the constellations or the space systems? But you actually
There's
went
no
back to
Aries.
the original, which is Gemini is the twins.
Twins.
So it's two
Exactly.
batteries. It's basically 2
Two batteries
batteries in
working
one.
together.
So what's my functional? So let's say I have this Gemini battery. So what's my day-to-day range?
Day-to-day range, well, it's actually 150 miles.
Okay, and then what's my long distance?
And the chemistry on that is
Six-
LFP.
LFP. Yeah.
Okay.
And then the long distance range, 600 miles.
And the chemistry on that is the
So we created a new chemistry, and it's called anode free,
okay.
meaning we take the graphite out of the anode, and we only have a copper foil on the anode side. So therefore, it plates lithium on copper. And the chemistry on the cathode side, the cathode side chemistry is primarily manganese, which is a very low cost material.
Right.
One of the lowest cost materials beyond iron, even lower cost than iron, is manganese.
Right.
So we
It's
have a
everywhere.
manganese with
Yeah.
a small amount of nickel. That material in the anode free cell. And I saw what you did. You said you kind of went over your head. It's a very simple premise, and I'll just use a way to explain chemistry here for a minute. In the normal lithium-ion battery, there are 2 sides of the battery where an ion exists. There's a charge, positive side and a negative side. The ion will transfer from one to the other.
Right.
When it goes to the negative side or the anode, it's like a shoebox. So I think of like a little ball that's fitting into a box, and that box is repeated like a wall of these little boxes. You put a ball inside it. What we're doing is we're taking the boxes all away, which are using space, and we're splattering that ball as like a paintball on the surface. And that's all that's going on is we're effectively plating lithium instead of it being housed in something that's big and bulky. We just took all the bulk out of the anode, and we just use the simple process of moving the ion across and plating it to the copper foil. That means that we have a lot more space for the cathode. It doubled the energy density. So what we did effectively is we removed a cost, and then we doubled the energy density of this chemistry overnight. Like that ability is just
Right.
immediate.
So just to go back, this is very interesting. The Aries 2 and the Gemini for passenger cars. Why not just have the Aries 2? What's the advantage of the Gemini?
Gemini gets you the long range.
What
No, but
Aries,
Aries
2,
2 is also long range.
Well, what Aries 2 does is it basically gives us the comparable range to everyday nickel cobalt batteries, but not using nickel cobalt.
Yeah.
So we matched today's range with LFP using Aries 2, and then we can double the range with Gemini.
Oh, I'm sorry. So
Yeah.
I thought
No.
I thought that the Tesla Michigan test was with Aries.
No,
that was
no,
with
no,
Gemini.
it's Gemini.
That's right.
Oh, that was
Yeah.
with Gemini. Okay,
That's right.
Okay.
And
And I want to explain the Tesla run as a prototype as well.
Sure.
So in the days that we were leading up to that proof of concept, we had the dual battery architecture. We wanted to get to a manganese nickel chemistry, an iron phosphate. All of that was like on the drawing books. And then we were looking at it and saying, okay, well, we want to get this vehicle running. Let's build a version of this battery that uses a straight nickel cobalt architecture as a surrogate. So that battery got lots and lots of range, but we were using the very chemistry that we said we wouldn't.
We don't want to use
And
that.
so
yeah.
that was like proof of concept. It's like we can do it. Then the next battery that we worked on is iron phosphate for daily driving and the manganese nickel or the range extender for extending range. And we're actually preparing, and we announced a program with BMW that the BMW iX is going to be fitted with this battery very soon. In fact, the surrogate of it is running around right now from our lab. I'm going to go drive it later today.
Oh.
So we're driving that on the road later today.
Okay, great.
And we're going to do a 600-mile demo with that BMW
So,
iX.
and when you say really soon, you mean really soon if you're driving the
Oh, yeah, like really soon. Like we'll come back and tell you, let's go for a drive.
Because you guys, I remember I drove the iX and I was talking to your tall PR guy out there.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I think you just announced it. He's like, that's what we signed a deal with. We're gonna double the range of that.
Yeah.
Which actually, has a pretty good range.
It's
So-
a pretty good range.
Yeah.
BMW
so-
iX is of the future, very near future. Will you have the Gemini pack
That's right.
at
Wow.
upwards of over 500, close to 600 miles.
600 miles range.
You're saying
600
600 miles.
600
range.
miles range.
Zing.
At
Okay.
least.
That's
Right.
our goal. 600
Yeah,
miles
okay.
range.
All right.
And
Because
Mhm.
we
because
work hard to make our goals.
well, it's it's interesting because like on the European, the WLP
LTP.
yes.
LTP cycle.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Like I was in Portugal yesterday. I drove the Mercedes EQE SUV, and it's
Yeah,
hysterical
yeah, yeah.
because it's rated at basically 600, but 596 kilometers on that cycle,
Yeah.
but 278 in the US. So there's like a 100-mile gap.
Somebody's lying.
Well, no, but just, the Germans are building it to their tests, not to even
That's
though
what I'm
they're going to
saying.
sell more here. But I find that like the iX, for instance, which is also I think rated right around 300,
Yeah.
it tends to over deliver. It actually
It
is
does,
a
yeah.
little bit more.
Some OEMs have done a lot of work to help an algorithm normalize itself to what the vehicle will actually give you
Got it.
instead of just predicting EPA range.
Right.
And that's also a learning algorithm that's very useful for the customer because you won't get surprised and shocked.
Yeah.
Like if you get on a road trip and you're like, wait a minute, you promised me 300, I'm only at 150. Why am I in trouble on range right now?
Right.
That can be very disturbing.
Right.
In the context of people that I care about deeply, my wife drives an electric car. She had one here in the Bay Area. When we went back to the Midwest, we had a long conversation about the fact that her mother lived in Columbus, Ohio. It's a 200-mile drive from Detroit. And would the electric cars actually get the range?
Reliable. Yeah.
Reliably. And
Yeah.
in the middle of winter, I was not able to do it without stopping to charge. And that kind of led her to be, okay, I'm going back to gasoline. So she goes back to gasoline, buy her a gasoline vehicle, and then she hates it. She's
Right.
like, this is
I have to
not
go to
what I
gas
want.
stations.
She,
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and plus everything about it.
Yeah.
It's just like electric cars, you can preheat them, you're charged every morning, all these factors that just make you love
Right.
an electric car. So we now have worked hard on, like, you might say I'm working for my wife right now,
Hey.
making a battery that can
Aren't
double
we all?
range.
Aren't we all? Aren't we all?
Yeah. And so I believe the market, as evidenced by my own experiences, that's a lot of what I learned when working at Apple is if you just take a look at your own life and your human-centered design mentality is do the thing that you know is great.
Yeah.
And others will also appreciate it. Meaning, I appreciate not being interrupted
Right.
when I drive. I don't want to stop and fast charge.
Right.
I don't want to stop at all. I just want to keep going into where I'm getting.
Well, I was going to
Yeah.
ask this question. Like 600 is great, but like, why not 1200? Like, you know what I mean? Like, why
Well,
ever charge it? You know?
So I want to give you, and
Okay.
this will be the last time I give you the opportunity to talk all about your company. But you've done a great explainer of Aries 2, Gemini, and then the last thing I saw, and I went to your site and did a deep dive. You have Aries Grid.
Okay.
So what's that?
Yeah. So you might say with the electric vehicle movement to electrification, it's kind of expected because people have seen that for a long time. electric vehicles have been around for the last 20 to 30 years and trying to get to market. And so when people imagine an electrified vehicle, they don't think too much about the fact that it's already part of the norms. But the grid, many people don't study how the grid is producing energy. It's not really needed. You just turn lights on and they're already there. And what we've now started to appreciate is that climate change is starting to change the way utilities are thinking about the grid. And I'm going to give you 4 examples that are profound. The first example is the wildfires here in California.
Yep.
The wildfires have caused the grid to think a lot about the transmission, distribution, localized energy storage, and distribution and how their grid works. Because if you have a problem in one area, you don't really want to shut off the whole state. And so localized energy production has become a new topic in the utilities. The second, look at hydroelectricity. Lake Mead is at the lowest levels since many, many years ago. And as the lake is actually low enough, it's actually being threatened with respect to enough supply that it can run reliably. A lot of hydropower is dependent upon, and that's a huge factor for long-term security. The third is that solar technology has been coming down in cost and has started reaching a tipping point. But if you put solar only on the grid, this really weird thing happens that you start generating so much solar that you can't actually have the fossil plants maintain their minimum functionality. And so then they start turning off solar. So all the solar that's come online,
Right.
they curtail like a third of it in California at any routine time, which doesn't make any sense because you've invested and now you're turning it off.
Right.
So what they need is storage to kind of take advantage of that.
Right.
The last thing that we see is the Inflation Reduction Act is a new policy in the U.S. to stimulate the domestic production of batteries, which is everything from supply chain to battery storage. And then the utility companies get a 40% investment tax credit on top of the cost reductions that we're getting. What happened is we were near the tipping point, and now, boom, we're at the tipping point and way beyond it. So the cost structure is better if any utility is going to invest in new power production. Last year alone, 60% of new power plants were renewable energy, which is actually not even with the Inflation Reduction Act fully implemented because it happened at the end of last year. What that means is that they're seeing it almost really good enough.
And
now
this has
it's
to do
definitely
with,
good enough.
with the price of solar just coming
Solar
so much
and
down.
storage now.
Okay.
That's right.
Because
So wait. The question was,
Oh yeah.
what's the product? So grid is basically a way to both answer questions points 1
The
through 3
local.
and take advantage
That's
of
right.
the Inflation Reduction Act, which is basically taking the commercial battery and lining them
and
all up.
that's right.
And making them into storage units that
Yes.
cities,
That's right.
municipalities could use.
That's right. So we announced a project. So I apologize for the long
okay.
answer.
No,
Without
it's a
answering
good
the
answer.
question.
It's a great answer.
So the Aries Grid is a battery that goes on the side of storing solar energy or renewable energy, and giving you a chance to access that at nighttime or when the renewable energy is not available.
Right.
So that's the purpose of Aries Grid.
Commercial. This is not for home use. This is commercial. Like
Yeah,
the large
big
factory.
batteries.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
6 megawatt hours. So that's 6 megawatt hours is like think of it as like almost 100 electric vehicle batteries kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, in the context of Aries Grid, we're using our commercial Aries 1 battery that's going into trucks,
LFP.
LFP
Yes.
technology. And we announced a program with a utility, Berkshire Hathaway Energy, and they were asked by West Virginia to come and look at the fact that West Virginia has a pretty great capacity for distributing energy, but overall they also have the interest in energy. They're like in the top 10% for producing energy in the country. And if you think about the future where fossils going to start going down, West Virginia is recruiting renewable energy sources.
Right.
And so Berkshire Hathaway's now made a project site in Ravenswood, West Virginia, where they're building the world's largest microgrid, fully disconnected from the utilities grid normally. So it doesn't charge or discharge from the grid. It's just isolated. And they're going to put a titanium production plant for aerospace and defense that will make parts from the solar, but that plant needs to run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So they've asked one to develop a battery that would go on that site, store the energy during the day, and give it back to them at night to run that plant. And that is effectively what a microgrid is all about. It might actually be the way forward that utilities can distribute energy all over the country in different small areas, then they connect that energy in a unique new way that's more stable and more firm.
Okay. World's largest microgrid sounds like giant shrimp. So I'm just kidding. That's fascinating. And Berkshire Hathaway, so small company,
Yeah,
no one's
yeah.
ever heard of.
No one's ever heard
that
of
doesn't
that.
look at investing in technology.
But I
for
want
the
to get back
future.
to what I was asking just for a second there. Like, why not 1,200 miles of range?
Yeah.
Or how far in the future is something like that?
I think that if we had a battery that would do that, the obvious thing that the market can kind of weigh, and the way I approach an OEM, is you offer a battery for base range,
Mhm.
and then you can have a mid range, and then you can have a premium range.
Mhm.
Let the market decide. Market forces are things like value. Market cares about value, and
Right.
maybe there will be some customers, and maybe the premium is high enough, like
I
the
mean,
most premium vehicle that you've got.
yeah, I mean, Rivian's eventually, if they ever get it going, they're kind of doing that because they're going to have, like, for the two motor one at least, they'll have a smaller battery, a mid battery, and then on the big motor one, quad motor, there'll be the max pack, which
Yeah.
is even more. So they kind of are thinking of 3 different battery sizes.
Yeah, a guy in my past, a Ford marketing guy, kind of gave me an interesting perspective, which is if you're selling something to someone and you give them a single choice, they're deciding yes or no. If you give them 3 choices, they're always debating the value of the bottom, middle, and top until they arrive at their own value judgment. And their process of thought is always spent on which one do I like, not do I like or not like all 3 of them.
Right.
And that's a very important thing in electric cars.
Yeah,
That's the
it's
premium.
it's a yes, which yes.
Which, yes, exactly.
So you just said so from your past. Let's get into your bio a bit because
Okay.
you have a pretty remarkable work history. So take us
Where
back.
were you born?
Born in Virginia,
Okay.
near Blacksburg, Virginia Tech area.
Okay.
Okay.
And you went to Virginia Tech.
I went to Virginia Tech.
Anything notable in high school? Were you like a big nerd? Were you like
I was a
science
runner.
fair?
I was a runner.
Okay.
Yeah. I was
Cross
a
country
runner.
or like track?
Cross country.
Okay.
Yeah, and I bought my first 67 Saab, which got me into cars.
Nice. Yeah.
And I learned how to take that carburetor apart and then draw every part of it, and that probably got me into.
So that's a sub
tech.
9.3?
96.
96.
Yeah.
Did you was
Cool
that the
car.
car you took? What'd you take for your driver's test?
A Saab 99.
So who's the Saab freak? Is
My
your
elder
parent?
brother. My elder
Oh,
brother.
your older brother.
Eldest brother. Yeah.
Was the 9.6 the one that had that weird overdrive like under the dash?
Yeah. In fact, it was a lever.
Yeah.
Because the oiling of the engine, it was a 2-stroke.
Yeah.
If you didn't have any fuel going to it, you could burn the engine up if you went down a long hill. So they had this release lever so
Right.
that the engine and transmission could get disconnected. So it's a really unique car.
I drove one of those in Texas. It was pretty fun.
Center
key.
ignition. Okay.
Yeah.
So sorry, eldest brother, big family. How many?
3 elder brothers and a younger sister, so 5.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
grew up on a
Pretty good.
mountain, dirt bikes, horses, lots of farm activity. My parents were both physics professors at Virginia Tech, but they loved farming and land.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
And everything from growing corn and having horses to livestock, and they just really appreciated land.
They're physics professors, and they let your eldest brother get Saabs. Like I don't understand.
Yeah, why
like,
not?
Okay,
Yeah.
like not a farm truck or something, or
Oh, we had a farm truck too. Don't
Okay.
worry. Yeah, we definitely had a farm truck.
what
My-
was it? Was it a Ford?
Ford. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. We were
alright.
a Ford family growing up for
Okay.
sure. Bronco, even the Pinto. My Pinto, Bronco,
Sure.
Okay.
Lincoln, Town Car, all of the Ford products. Yeah.
So did you get into Virginia Tech on your own credentials, or did your parents, being physics professors, help?
You know, I would say I wasn't always focused on the best grade, so I
Right.
can definitely say it probably didn't hurt me that my parents were there.
And you studied chemistry?
No.
No, I started out in a general arts and sciences because I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Gotcha.
Then I tried physics, and I was like definitely abandoned ship because I was not very good at that.
Right.
But
of
I did
math.
know all the professors because I grew up in the
Sure.
physics department,
Right.
all running around as a kid. But no, I stumbled into mechanical engineering, and it started getting clear to me that I liked that because they did Baja and Formula SAE. They kind of built race cars in a way.
Right.
Okay.
And to me, I was really attracted to working on cars because I did that a lot.
Okay.
And so I liked the mechanical engineering, and they had a machine shop so I could do work with my own hands. And then lo and behold, I sort of tripped into the most important decision probably in my life is General Motors comes to campus. They post an advertisement for GM Sunrayce USA.
Mhm.
And
Yes,
I
remember
looked at
this.
that and I was like, yeah, solar. My mom's a solar physicist. She worked on the early 70s sputtering manufacturing technologies for solar. And I kind of connected, okay, my mom and dad, both solar and nuclear, care about alternative energy. This is a solar technology vehicle. I love working on cars.
You
So
did Sunraycer? Is that what you're saying?
Sunrayce, yeah.
You did it. Oh,
GM
no kidding.
Sunrayce, yeah.
Okay.
It's Florida to Michigan.
Huh.
Yeah.
Did you get any tips from your mom? Was she like,
Oh, my mom would come and visit us quite often. I got married early, and so my wife would come and solder cells for the. I always credit my wife for
Wait,
powering my
she an engineer?
car.
She also?
No, she's not an engineer, but she used to come to lab
Chicken solder.
she can solder because I was always at the lab.
Right.
She's like, we just had gotten married, so she's like, well, this is the only way I can get to see my husband is come to the lab. And then when she got to the lab, it's like, hey, we got these 19,000 cells that we have to solder, so you're gonna have to learn how to solder. And she was like, okay.
So how'd you do at the Sunrayce?
Not great. We had a lot of reliability problems. We ended up with, I think we were in the bottom third.
Okay.
But we got so much out of it. We
Sure.
were incredibly lucky to be working in the field of like powertrain.
Right.
And very rarely in any kind of college activity do you get to ground up something that no one knew how to do. Even our professors were like, oh, okay, motor inverter, you need to talk to these people. And you go to the people in the electrical engineering department, they're like, well, no, we don't do any of that, but we'll help you figure out what to do and where the industry is. Those days, GM was leading an effort at the World Solar Challenge in Australia.
Mhm.
And when they won the World Solar Challenge in Australia with the GM Sunraycer,
Yes.
and they wanted to invest into an electric vehicle effort, which became ultimately the EV1,
Right.
they needed the equivalent of what we're talking about today as workforce development. They needed something to stimulate academic, and they thought of this idea of GM Sunrayce. They would seed 30 plus universities around the country with $10,000, if I remember right. And that was the initiation of, I would say, the entrepreneurial effort to invent electric cars all around the country, all different types. And when we went to Florida, it was like seeing how people read the same rule book but solved the problem differently.
That's what's great about
I
racing.
loved it,
Yeah,
and
right,
racing
right,
it.
Right.
I remember, if I might tell a story,
Yeah,
I remember
please.
watching the MIT team pull up in this tiny little electric car. It was like a little matchbox thing, and it had no area. And everyone made the car the biggest they could, putting solar cells on the whole area that was allowed. And they chose not to, and we were so like blown away. Like, how did they think they were going to ever solve the problem that way? And then we see them charging by taking a little shoebox out of the car, and they unraveled the solar array on the grass, and they plugged it in. And we're like, oh, well, yeah, actually, the rules never said you couldn't do that.
Right.
And then they had a lighter weight, and they had a better drag coefficient.
Right.
And they took advantage of charging before and after the race, the way all of us did. And actually, that race taught us a bunch about problem solving, even the way the University of Michigan did it, is they involved the business school to fundraise. Well, we never thought to do that. and by the way, they roll up with 2 tractor trailers. Okay, and the first one,
Michigan
University
style.
of Michigan,
Yeah,
the cars on
yeah.
it, we're all like drooling over the logo and everything, and we're like, wow. And then they open the back, and it's got 2 cars in it.
Yeah.
The car and the spare. And we're like, the spare? That's pretty cool. Then the second one rolls up. We're like, what's in the second one? And they're like, a machine shop. And we're like, well, of course you have a machine shop.
Yeah.
Now, they were very generous. They let all of us use the machine
Sure.
shop. But what I would say is that race was more than me getting an electric vehicle. It was also thinking out of the box. It was learning how to innovate with, like, reading between the lines, not just the lines.
Mhm.
And then the experience of doing something profoundly different than all of my other peers at school.
Right.
And then I just decided I should work on an electric car, and that's why I decided to stick to it.
First of all, that's an amazing anecdote. And like, what a miracle that like you stumbled into that. Like,
Yeah.
'cause
Yeah.
they only do that 1 year, right?
Well, it was
No.
founded in the year that I was a sophomore at Virginia Tech. Sorry, a junior at Virginia Tech. But they continued on every year after that.
Oh,
They
did
still
they?
do
Oh,
it.
okay. Oh, okay.
They still do it,
Okay.
which is
Well,
amazing.
I'm out of it then.
Yeah.
But so after Virginia Tech, what's your
You
first?
graduated with a mechanical engineering,
Mechanical engineering degree, and then after that, turns out I partnered with a company in the local area to get the motor and the inverter, and they helped me with mentoring and design and all of that. And then those guys offered me a job before I even finished that project, so I went to work for a motor and controls company.
Okay.
And as they were doing electric drives for military and submarines and all kinds of different electrified platforms. I got into military experience on mil specs and so forth. But my eye was always towards electric vehicle Detroit because I was like, even though that was a quick, easy job because they offered me a job, it wasn't the thing I was passionate to do.
Right.
So I spent about a year knocking on GM, at the time Chrysler, and then Ford's door. And luckily, one of the Ford alumnus came back to Virginia Tech and interviewed me and brought me to Detroit.
Wow.
And
Okay.
this is what year?
90. Oh,
90.
sorry, 92.
92. And then, so what were you doing at Ford when you started?
I joined electric vehicle directly.
Okay.
And my first assignment was in the motor inverter area because that's what I did in my job. And I was given the problem that their inverter that was in the first electric vehicle fleet that they were designing leaked. So, had like a problem with the water leaking through seals. And they wanted me to see if I could work on fixing that. And, my wife was walking by our bathroom one night and she's like looking in and she's like, "What are you doing?" And I had this inverter dunked under the bathtub, in the water, submerged. And she's like, "Did they allow you to bring that at home? And why are you doing that at home?" And I was like, "Well, I just wanted to really study overnight what's going on." And as I worked on it, I also wasn't that like super interested in the topics that they gave me.
Sure.
And then we had a battery fire. And the battery fire that we had was kind of like, it was advanced technology. It was the first fleet. We had a sodium sulfur battery that operated at 300 degrees centigrade.
Oh, wow.
And they looked for, the chief engineer was really super, I think, super sophisticated about his approach to problem solving. He said, "I want a diverse number of engineers that can come together and figure out the root cause of this, not only the team of the battery engineers, but a diverse number." And he assigned me to that team. And I got into that team, and eventually we solved the problem of why it caught on fire and were able to correct it. And then I became a battery engineer. From then on, from my whole career at Ford,
And so that just fascinated you. You just said
it
this
became
is-
fascinating to me.
Who
Yeah.
who was the big boss at the time at Ford?
Well, the top guy was a guy named John Wallace, and John Wallace actually lives here in California. I still keep in touch with him. Really a pioneer in the day. Founded the electric vehicle effort a bit, but my mentor was Brad Bates, the one that hired me. He was a research personality that wrote the papers that got Ford convinced to invest in a team, and he worked underneath John Wallace. And so, really, those two were in my recollection, were the two personalities that led that effort.
And did you worked on hydrogen solutions when you were at Ford? Hydrogen fuel cells?
Yeah, that kind of goes back to that story of that Honda EV Plus. So I came to California and that EV Plus wasn't selling, and I went back to Ford and talked to Brad about my original mentor and the person that hired me.
Yeah.
And he was back in research, and I talked to him about the fact that, I don't think electric cars at 100 miles are really a thing. What should I work on? And he happened to have gone back to research and was just starting the Ford Daimler Ballard research effort on fuel cells.
Right.
And so he asked me to join his research effort, and so I did. And I worked with Ballard on hydrogen fuel cell technology, hydrogen storage, and then I got stationed in Germany for some time to work with the alliance.
And
between
what year was this?
Around 99.
Oh, so
around
that early,
99,
wow.
Yeah.
So what? A lot of people, we get a lot of, there's a lot of EV naysayers out there, let's say, and a lot of them are like, the solution's hydrogen. And
Yeah.
I'm always like, no, that's crazy because you got to make the hydrogen and
Yeah.
conservation of energy and blah blah
Yeah.
blah. But so, what do you say? You worked on this. You're a battery chemist.
Yeah.
Like, why not hydrogen? Why isn't that a good solution for passenger vehicles?
Well, at the time, the reason hydrogen even came up is because of the failure of batteries to provide enough range to attract the market. That was the only reason.
Right.
And so, as I worked on hydrogen storage at the normal pressures and the ideas of storing hydrogen, there still wasn't enough room in a car to get the range that you needed. And so I felt like I went from a 100-mile achievement to like a 170-mile achievement. And I was also starting to get skeptical that, does anyone really know what the right number is?
Right.
And I thought of it as, you better do at least the refueling range of a normal car. And so we doubled the pressure of the hydrogen tank. So that was my job at Ford.
And
is
what
figuring out-
pressure were you running
It
at
was
the
at
time?
it was at 350 bar, about 5,000 psi.
Yeah.
And then it went up to
10,000.
700 bar or 10,000 psi.
Because I know I drove Mercedes has this thing called the B-class F-Cell.
Yeah,
And
I worked on that a little bit with
Oh,
them as
did
well.
you?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I drove the first. Like, we were the idiots that famously ran out of hydrogen on the first leg of their trip around the globe. But
That's funny.
well, they never told us not to go 160 kilometers an hour.
Yeah,
they
there you go.
They,
Range and speed.
We literally sat in a presentation where they were like, "This is what a stop sign looks like." I'm like, "Why are you telling us this?" And they go, "Well, Italians." And they never said don't go, because we're on unrestricted Autobahn, but they wanted us to go 110, 55 miles an hour, or whatever it was,
Yeah.
like the whole way, or 70 miles an hour. And we were like, "Bah," and we ran out, and I was got punched out by a German engineer. But anyways, but I remember they were like, "Yeah, it's 10,000 PSI. It's really hard to refuel these
Yeah.
with a mobile truck."
As we worked on that standard and we had to convince 4 tank companies, I remember the Daimler engineer and I went around acting as if we had decided for the whole industry. And then all these tank suppliers were like, wow, they might have decided and we have to do it now. And we started moving the industry towards 10,000 PSI. But the hardware was not very easy on the regulators, the tanks.
Right.
The tanks were heavy.
Right.
It's not really well known, but hydrogen storage tanks are only 4 to 5% by weight. So they have the hydrogen in them, but the massive tanks that are needed and how big they are. So we worked a lot on getting range, but my philosophy of this whole hydrogen movement was also aligned with what you started with. And that is that hydrogen doesn't exist as a resource on Earth because it's too light.
Right.
Therefore, you have to take it from something already here. It's either water or natural gas usually, or maybe an alcohol. But then you convert it. Then you have to store it, then distribute it, then put it on a vehicle, store it again, and then you have to convert it again on the vehicle.
Yeah, and I was also reading the other day that it leaks like crazy.
Yeah, that's right.
And that no one talks about that, but it's because it's so small, it leaks constantly.
It's energy intensive to create, to store,
to
transport, the whole thing.
Okay. And hydrogen also interacts a lot with metals. Hydrogen is very interactive because it's kind of gets into the molecular structure of things.
Because it's so small, yeah.
Exactly. And so as it bounds up, because it's only got one electron, it loves to attach itself to everything for the second electron. And as you look at the molecule of hydrogen and its gaseous form where 2 hydrogens are together, but then they catalyze and it starts to like attract itself into alloying other materials.
Right.
It's a problem for valves, regulators, and other materials. So what I found in a 4-year research effort is I started not agreeing with hydrogen.
Gotcha.
And then I decided in an independent way, before pretty much anyone else worked on this, in at least the company I was in, that let's split this problem into a daily driver on lithium-ion battery and a range extender. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
And that whole thing was, let's make the hydrogen fuel cell just an on-off device. And, there was something big called a humidifier. When you're idling a fuel cell, that's where its weakest point is, because it needs to be humid, humid supply of gases. It can't be dry. But in the case of running it at peak power, it's so easy to run it at peak power. So we had this idea that let's just turn on a fuel cell at top power, charge the battery, turn it off, and then use a lithium-ion battery. So what got me into lithium-ion batteries again was trying to make a hydrogen vehicle successful.
Gotcha.
And when I did the lithium-ion plug-in hybrid and I looked at the whole equation of that, I started actually thinking a lithium-ion actually has enough that we could get all the way to 300 miles without worrying about hydrogen altogether.
So what about like regular hybrids? Like how do you feel, or plug-in hybrids? Like how do you like? I look at them, I'm like, oh, that's a horrible compromise. It's a donkey and a horse. You know, it's too like. How do you feel about it?
I felt also, and I owned a Volt, and I owned an i3 with a range extender. I felt like you get hooked on the electrified portion of it. You just kind of hate when the engine kicks in.
Right.
Because it does change the experience, and you're also, you're not delivering that full value that you're hoping to get, which is zero emission, if you believe in that. So I actually didn't really adopt too many of these range extended plug-in hybrids. They had terrible small batteries.
Yes.
And there are some plug-in hybrids that were like 18 miles.
Right.
And I'm like, 18 miles, if you go fast, it's 9.
Right.
And that didn't make any sense to me at all.
So it sounds like your story is basically every solution you tried was like just the answer was the battery sucks. We need to build a better
battery.
Yeah.
Actually, that's incredibly profound what you just said, because that's why I decided.
Incredibly.
Easy. That's why I decided to go into the battery industry, because I was working from the auto side and always pushing on ropes. And then I decided, well, okay, switch my perspective. And if I think I actually could contribute, and maybe if I think it's so easy, go try and do it. I actually never thought it was easy, but nevertheless, go try to work on the other side of the equation to develop a battery that would work. And when I went to
A123.
A123, the founders were at the time, the company was in Boston, kind of focused on a different set of markets, and they wanted an automotive market.
Right.
And they gave me the chance to go into developing all of that. So I was the first employee in Michigan to focus on developing an automotive team. And I was thoroughly excited about the opportunity to be a startup. And I was also kind of thankful that I didn't have to do the business plan or raise any money or figure out the
Right.
business side of it. It was like someone
And
was
coming
keeping the
out of
lights on.
Ford,
Yeah.
it must have been pretty freeing to be at a startup. And I assume there weren't a lot of other employees in Michigan or a lot of oversight at the
Yeah.
time.
Well, I would say I mean, another kind of interesting thing that popped me out of Ford was the housing crisis. When the housing crisis happened, the decision to pull our funding and program was related to like the financial pinch the company had. And then I didn't have a real purpose there.
Oh, right.
And I mean, I was like, what, do you want me to like find a job in the regular? Like, no, I don't think I could do that.
So
And
wait, so you at the time, that was because I just checked. You were 15 years at Ford.
yeah,
You exited then around 2008.
8.
Ooh,
Yeah.
okay.
That's the house.
And who was that Mullally at the time? No.
Yeah, it was Mullally.
So you're under Mullally.
Great guy.
Great guy. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What title did you exit Ford at? What you were,
Manager. I
you're
was
a
manager of a vehicle integration.
Okay, and then
Yeah.
then you landed at A123 as were you president of the?
No, I think I don't remember, but it might have been director or senior director of automotive.
It's like
Yeah.
like kind of a business development role.
Well, no, it
basically?
was an engineering role.
Engineering
They
role?
they
Okay.
still had their business team in Boston.
Oh, okay.
My job was to lift off the ground an engineering effort in Detroit,
Okay.
and I
And Detroit because they wanted a foothold for automotive.
yeah. Actually, they had struck a deal with Chrysler to build a battery for Chrysler on their new electrified platforms, but they didn't have a team. And I so happened to run into a budget meeting where my budget was zeroed out, and I was like,
Yeah.
I was like, what does zero mean?
Yeah.
Does zero mean like zero? Is there another version of this that isn't zero?
Yeah.
And that day, kind of interesting coincidence, or maybe my destiny, as I was walking down the stairwell, going back to my other offsite location, I got a call from the founder of A123, and he said, "Hey, I just had an amazing meeting. I'd like to have lunch with you. Are you around Detroit?" And we had lunch together that day. And he offered me the opportunity to start an automotive team.
That's a wild coincidence.
It's so coincidental. And literally,
Yeah.
I mean, the number of minutes between that $0 budget and this event were so small. I just felt like also that was a bit of like,
Yeah.
okay, well,
Providence or
right.
something.
Yeah, something like that. And as I thought about it, it didn't take me long to imagine that I could have a bigger impact and still serve the company I loved, Ford, with going into the battery industry and trying to break through barriers.
Right.
What are the barriers? Well, I worked for 16 years in battery, and I understood as an automotive customer what I thought needed to be done. Then I went to work on trying to invent that technology.
So you saw the future, meaning you just made a decision back in the solar run days that like cars should be like when did you have that thought that like electric vehicles is a better thing than a gas powered vehicle?
Yeah, it went a little bit further back for me because of the oil embargo. My mom and dad, my father was a nuclear physicist and my mother a solar physicist, both of which cared about alternative energy. My mom used to make eggs in a solar oven, and like we had some really interesting discussions at the dinner table about energy and energy security and the haves and have-nots. You know, people that have oil and the ones that don't, and then the arguments in the world's politics around the haves and have-nots.
Right.
And so, where my mom and dad convinced me of something as a kid was thinking about the inevitability that you that is
Pardon
that the
the
word?
bell. Well,
Oh,
he
inevitable.
He
Thinking about the inevitability.
yes.
Yeah.
Every time
very
you say
good.
it, we gotta do
it. Thinking about this future, you have to imagine that you need a diverse range of sources of energy. And they would count it for me. They would say, like, you know, you have wind, you have solar, you have nuclear, you have natural gas, you have hydro, you have all
Coal.
geothermal, coal. So as you have more and more sources of the same energy with a common denominator, in this case, electrons, and electrons are fast in shipping.
Right.
Not like hydrogen, not complicated like oil, but fast in shipping because there's also a utility grid that's already been built.
Right.
That will likely win. So I had that belief system in my head.
So that's crazy. Like
but
that,
it wasn't like it wasn't programmed to a point where I was coming out of high school thinking I want to work on energy.
And
but it was like a bedrock idea that was already there.
And right, I was gonna say because they weren't saying like they weren't talking about cars; they were just talking about energy.
Exactly, energy security.
Yeah. Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So, what did you do? What was the landscape like outside of you and Ford when you got to A123? This is 2008, so Tesla was just like a twinkle
Yes.
in the eye, right? But what was like hot? You were looking out and going, man, that thing looks like it's going to be. Did you have a thought about Tesla? Were you looking at what these guys were doing?
Oh, this is so hilarious. There's a guy named Tom Gage.
Okay.
AC Propulsion.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you know Tom Gage, AC Propulsion. Okay, so I went to visit him when I was at Ford. And I was sitting in his entry. He has a small office area. Sitting in his entry area, and I see his assistant slicing the skins off of 18650s. And you know, like you're eating peanuts and you're shelling skins, and you got this pile of skins. Well, she has this pile of 18650 skins and all these cells lined up.
He's talking about the laptop battery.
Laptop batteries. Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Panasonic, right?
Literally, exactly.
Yes.
And so what was so funny is I was probably witnessing the first Tesla equivalent packs.
Oh, that's
because
funny.
literally.
Did you know it?
No. And I was like, Tom, what are you doing with these cells? And he's like, I can't talk about it.
Oh,
and so,
funny.
So that root birth in that area, I would say, and even when I was at Ford, and I remember talking about a pack built out of 18650s. Is the common idea at Ford at the time was that's what you do when you don't have the funding to do a battery right.
Got it.
Everybody looking down their nose, right?
Yeah, I don't know if
convert something,
or it was a misunderstanding of purpose. Whoever, I don't want to say there was a derogatory thing, but my friends and I would look at it like 8,000 cells or 7,000. That doesn't make any sense,
right?
And then when I had the first battery working at Ford, which was this plug-in hybrid. We had a cell go into what we call that thermal runaway, right? Or had a fire. And I was like, that chemistry is brutal.
Right.
And I actually found my way to A123 because of their chemistries advertising this different safety. That's where I met A123. Well, then I started thinking about this small cell is a way to compartmentalize failure.
Right.
And that way you would not be like the whole pack affected as opposed to a single cell
out of thousands.
So in my context, I thought of Tesla as kind of brilliant because it created a way to manufacture. We always had trouble with manufacturing and cost of manufacturing. Laptops were already a thing, so the manufacturing lines were already there.
Right.
But it compartmentalized failure, and it was actually interestingly robust to any failure because it had so many in parallel that you could afford a cell to fail. So in those many ways, I started appreciating what they were doing, and I never discounted it. As I visited JB and the team in Tesla's California lab to drive the
Roadster.
The Roadster.
Yeah,
exactly. And I thought of the company not in terms that they would be a future automotive leader, but that they were ingenious in their pursuit of like something that would be boldly different.
Right.
I like the team.
Right.
And funny story about JB, my daughter goes at University of Michigan. I just started A123, literally the same time she was starting University of Michigan. And she comes to me and she says, I joined the solar car team and I'm really excited and I promised them that you would donate the battery. And I thought, okay, that's great. I'd love to donate the battery. Solar car is great. I'd love to jump back in. So we start talking about batteries. I give her all these specs. She goes back to the team and she comes back the next day and she's like, Dad, your cells kind of suck. And I was like,
what?
Yeah, okay, I understand. It's oxide chemistry. And so what she had done is she would talk to JB at the auto show and she's now texting or not, she's emailing JB Straubel about, Tesla's experience with cells. And then, an 18650 Panasonic specs against an LFP were obviously much better.
Right.
And so we went our ways. She desourced me, if you will, whatever. And that's cool.
Yeah.
And so
you pulled the funding for her education.
I pulled the funding. That's right. Yeah, right. And so then about a week later, she comes back and she says, wait a minute. In the rules, it says if you use an LFP battery technology, we can have this much more energy, is like 50% more energy on board because the rules encourage the safety of it.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, so you need me again. So that was a good
Interesting.
story about the early days and the differences of the technology. But I think Tesla was on the track of disrupting range, just like the 100 or 150. 150 was Nissan Leaf experience, and that was maybe the largest volume electric vehicle at the time.
Right.
They were looking to disrupt by doubling.
Right.
And they successfully recruited a massive following. And I actually studied a lot in that history example. And I believe in a lot of electric vehicle, like learning from history. I've studied a bit in the early days of electric vehicles. And going into our company's journey, I thought, don't be bashful about what you think really needs to happen. Because for every car to be an electric car, you have to overcome all those conditions we talked about.
Right.
Do you still keep in touch with JB? Are you?
He's in Redwood right now, and
Yep.
I'm definitely, we could say that our companies interact.
Redwood Materials, which is his new startup since leaving as CTO of Tesla. He's founded a company that is all about recycling batteries at scale.
Yeah.
And we hope to get him already in touch with his PR
Oh, good.
in that chair where
Mujeeb
Mujeeb is sitting.
So let me ask you this, because I'm always fascinated by like seeing, Gage's assistant peeling the batteries.
Yeah.
Because the famous story where Steve Jobs goes to Xerox PARC, and they're like, we have this thing called Ethernet. Totally doesn't see it. We have, I forget the other crazy technology they had, but there's a mouse, and all he saw
GUI,
was the
right,
mouse. He missed email. He
Yeah.
missed email. He missed the Ethernet. When you saw that, and you realized that they were building an electric car out of the laptop batteries, my understanding is that those two were really just focused on sports cars. And when Musk showed up, he said, "No, we're going to do a sedan, a 7-passenger vehicle." That was before the SUV.
Exactly.
They didn't get his vision.
Yeah.
Did you? I mean, because we were talking about, you had sort of seen the future. It's inevitable. Go ahead, Ed. That electricity will power cars. You know what I mean? When Elon's idea, the Model S, when that showed up,
Yeah.
were you like, duh? Or were you like, wow?
Yeah, I think there was a personality that I remember asking the question, what does this have to do with us?
Okay.
And I thought to myself, well, that's not a good reaction, because this electric car has everything to do with how you break through range.
Right.
And I felt like that range, I mean, of course, it also did a performance hat trick. When you combine performance and
Sure.
range, when you could be in the equivalent if everyone goes after a high performance McLaren or a Ferrari or a Lotus, you can have that in a family car, and then you deliver range.
Yeah.
That's a pretty important set of hat tricks in one spot.
It's funny you say, because I've talked with Peter, I'm blanking his last name, from Lucid, Peter
Rawlinson.
and he was the chief engineer of the Model S. And when when right before Lucid came out, I was interviewing him, and I was saying, wow, like a 1,000 horsepower or whatever, and he goes, it's just a byproduct of efficiency. He goes, it sells cars, but I don't care about that. He's like, but if you make motors smaller and you make batteries more efficient, you get more horsepower as a result of more efficiency. And I found that fascinating.
Yeah.
I thought that they were trying to make really powerful cars.
Yeah.
And they weren't. It just so happened that by,
They need the
creating
headline.
range.
Kind of like, do we
Yeah.
need 600? No, but let's get people over the hump. So before we move on to what you did after A123, anything else notable about your time there? I know that they kind of there was an acquisition.
Yeah.
What was going on at A123 that made you go to this company named after a very popular fruit?
Yes. Well, I would say my career at A123 was in two buckets. My first bucket was automotive systems. It was thinking about battery management, pack design, module design, and interfacing with auto companies and trying to earn their favor and become a supplier. The second,
and you were successful, right?
we were successful.
Chevy
Spark.
Chevy Spark was
Yeah,
the
it was the
first.
first
Which
LFP.
made like 400 pound-feet of torque and was the size of a shoebox. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was
Yes,
awesome.
okay.
Yeah, and I mean, I would say that was leveraging a lot of what I knew how to do from the way I worked at Ford as a systems engineer. I understood that from how batteries should be supplied. I could do that as a supplier. But then midway in my career there, they offered me the opportunity to go to Boston and start leading cell development, cell engineering, and I didn't really have much by way of training or technical depth in that area. but they wanted an automotive perspective to be brought to the engineering process and then the materials process. It was actually true that we were getting materials from suppliers that met all the requirements that did not work together.
Oh,
And so you
interesting.
have like a set of materials, they all
Right.
work together. Then all of a sudden the cell doesn't work. And then you prove that one material changed, but it met all the requirements, but they couldn't understand. And it was like, how do you specify something and clearly make sure
So it's like
that
you
with
needed
sort of noise factors that it always stays
you
working
need like a
together?
middleware layer to
Yeah.
kind of like make everything talk to each other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I was brought in to think about bringing automotive thinking and process to Boston's R&D center and the Cell Engineering Center. And I'd say as I got surrounded by some of the highest talent I've ever worked with,
Sure.
given their academic backgrounds and their scientific understanding of materials. So I was in the constant curiosity mode, much like the way I would just describe my experience meeting Alan Mulally, where he was always curious and he would ask always the questions that would bring about your realization that actually he's trying to digest your technology, but in the questions he's asking, you start realizing the way he thinks, and then you start understanding your product better by how you're explaining it, and then you start realizing things you didn't know. The same thing happened with our team in Boston, is that I got hooked into material science, supplier engagement, powder manufacturing, going to China quite a bit, figuring out how to manufacture this product and how to engineer better cells and get more out of the cells chemistries. That second career was probably the education of my lifetime that I needed, because everything else I
Right.
had kind of been exposed to, but this was completely brand new territory. And when you're in your career at that many years and you're just learning like you just went back to school,
Right.
that feels pretty good. I like that kind of environment.
And then Boston, you were surrounded by like MIT people and Harvard
PhDs,
and all
exactly.
that. And
That's
so
right.
they're like the best minds in the
Yeah,
country.
and they did a great job bringing about advanced technologies. And Yetming Chang, another mentor that I feel like I learned a lot from MIT, had a great recruiting talent capability, and so he brought a lot of great people together. And so that was an asset to me. And when it was bought by Wang Chung in a bankruptcy, the culture of the company was trying to maintain forward momentum, but didn't always have the same operating principles, to a point where lots of topics like headcount reductions and cutting back R&D spending and lots of topics like that were just different in the way that we were operating before. And so then I started something there called Venture Technology. So A123 Venture Technologies, they made me the president of a business unit, because I said, instead of shutting down half the R&D center, let's make an incubator. Let's get people to pay for the services. Let's build better relationships in the Boston area, and let's create an R&D pipeline of revenue. And that was a starting point for me to realize how to run a business.
Yeah.
So the A123 kind of launching point.
So this is like grad school.
Grad school.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
like for both, not only for batteries,
That's right.
but for being an entrepreneur.
I definitely felt
Business
now
school,
looking
yeah.
back that's what that was.
Okay.
And then you go into Apple.
Yes.
Can you say anything about your time at Apple?
Yeah, you can. Come on. No one's listening.
All right. Well, I'm going to say the front end was so exciting because I got a call, and when I spoke to the recruiter, and he asked me, he said, well, okay, it's been a great conversation. Do you have a resume? And I said, actually, I'm just thinking about it. I don't think I've ever written a resume, because when I left Ford, I was hired by the founder of A123, and they didn't require. And then I was hired. I wasn't hired again, and no, I don't have a resume. And he's like, well, that's no problem. I tell you what, I've learned enough about you. I'll just write your resume for you. And I thought to myself, and by the way, if they had made me write a resume, it might have taken me a month because I would have hated that.
Sure.
And I was like, this is a great company. I like this company. So when I went to Apple and interviewed, I felt like I was coming into a whole different side. My son had just graduated. I had not moved to Boston. I had been traveling every week back and forth.
Okay, from
Michigan. Yeah, that was a little painful. And when my son graduated, my family's intention was that we were going to move to Boston, and we were going to live there full time. And so we were already on a track of moving. And then I got this really out of the blue. It was, again, serendipitous question that, would you like to come and interview? And so I did. And then I just really enjoyed the personalities that I met. And I kind of thought this would be a really different opportunity. And they wouldn't tell me what I'd be working on, which was a great other experience. It's like they weren't hiring me to solve a problem. They were hiring me as an individual that they thought would well, anyway, they didn't fully connect the dots for me at the time.
Right.
And I can't talk about what I did there because that would be off limits to what I've agreed to do. But I'll say an educational value that I got out of it was that if you want to create a disruption, then you have to be willing to struggle to do that which has never been done without worry of there's no technology roadmap to get there. Because actually, that's what is going to create invention.
Right.
Is you're going to go after like 600 miles on a single charge was seemingly crazy at the time that we wrote that down. But the fact that we thought of an idea that was pragmatically assembling two things that already knew how to work, we got a lot of intellectual property out of that because people hadn't thought about it that way.
Right.
So I think that I wouldn't have approached that problem that way. The second was my boss there taught me about, in 6 months, he helped me really think about the following statement. He would say, Mujeeb, do you know that? Or did you hear that?
Oh, interesting.
And I was like,
I
okay,
heard that.
you're right. I actually heard that. I don't actually think I know that.
Right.
And the difference between do you know something and did you hear something kind of kept resonating until finally I could realize a way in my mind's eye to park information in a parking lot and then take time to study whether I wanted to believe it or not. And if I would hearsay something, I would just decide, okay, I don't know that yet.
Right.
So I don't learn it. I don't know that yet. But if I'm interested in it, I'll go and learn it. And actually that prevented me from making all kinds of statements later on because actually in that culture in Cupertino, it's all about your credibility is all about your word being right. Like when you say something, then you can sort of predict and it's okay to fail. Entrepreneurship is failing. But when you make a statement, you have to decide whether you're making a factual statement or do you need to caveat it? Like, I actually don't know this,
Right.
but this is the thing I think we ought to study. That's a different way to say something. Yeah.
That's actually it's profound because it's similar to the Toyota has one of their operating principles is called Genchi Gunbutsu, which I believe is go and see for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And they encourage everybody from the guy at the factory line to the top executive. Like if there's a problem, if you're going to pull the cord and stop the whole line, you better know what the reason is. So go see what the problem is, so then you can know how to solve it, whether it's a problem or not.
But it's
That's
also
right.
fascinating. It ties back to your sun racing days with there's no roadmap, and that to me when I'm always fascinated in like top speed stuff like out on the salt flats because nobody really knows. Like there's and I remember when I was out there at Bonneville and like what tire pressure should you have to go 400 miles an hour? It was like these two brothers that hated each other, and one guy's like 100 psi. That's the way. Another guy's like take the rubber off the wheels, like do it on metal. You don't want any rubber. So like. And they've been doing it for
Pushing
40
the
years,
limits.
and they have no idea.
Yeah.
It's because no one knows. It's just bleeding edge stuff.
So when you're at Apple, your title according to LinkedIn, your resume, your digital resume is Senior Director, Special Projects and Energy Storage.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, you already stated that I'm not going to ask you directly, but your time there is 2014 to 2020. In that time frame, MotorTrend, we somewhat infamously did a cover story.
Our idea of the Apple
Our
car.
idea of proposing what the Apple car could look like. It actually caused quite a bit of kerfuffle. It ended up being on CNBC. We accidentally did rather a clever thing because we hired a designer to draw the car, and we did a little video of it. And then, of course, the proposition on the cover was, "Is this the Apple car?" And of course, anybody in publishing knows when you put a question on the cover, the answer is no.
Yeah.
But everybody bought it.
Right.
Because we tweeted it with a video, and they pulled this thing together. CNBC did a live broadcast analyzing this thing. It was hilarious. I got a call from the PR guy at Apple who I'd never talked to, and he's like, "Did you talk to anybody at the company?" I'm like, "No." So he's like, "Thank you. That's all I need to know."
Yeah.
Click.
Yeah.
Any of this resonate? Does this sound familiar to you at all? Anything, something related?
Did
to
you
what
hear about this when you were at
working on?
Apple?
Or you like,
No comment.
What kind of NDA did you sign?
Look, this guy is giving me thumbs up, but he's not even the PR guy for Apple. Like, all right.
That's
Listen,
a
I
hell
just
of an
respect.
NDA, yeah.
I just respect their philosophy so much,
Fair enough.
and so much the company's leadership.
But secretness,
Project
being
Titan?
that
Listen, I didn't
secretive?
talk about what I worked on at home, and actually, my family
Right.
was kind of annoyed with that because they're like,
Sure.
they stopped kind of getting interested in me at all. It's like I
Right.
go home and they're like, "Yeah, whatever. You're not going to talk about anything."
All right,
So that's
all
fine.
right,
All right,
fine.
so-
Well, hey,
What-
what are you asking?
Oh, I'm going to ask him this. I'm going to say, okay, so our next energy, BMW. I know you have other OEMs that are about to sign, have signed. When do we hear about the next car manufacturers that'll be implementing your technology?
So we're as we have signed the joint development agreement with BMW, and we've promised to do a demonstration of 600 miles on a single charge. That event will likely stimulate um, additional activity in that space.
Hmm.
But we already have kind of a pipeline of
Yeah.
commercial, grid, and automotive
Can you
discussions.
talk about any of them?
Well, we can talk about 4 that we've announced.
Oh, okay.
We've been sourced by Shift, which is the box truck maker. They
Okay.
kind of do delivery platforms, and
Got it. Got it. Got
many
it.
many companies are leveraging their platforms. They were the leader, about half the box trucks, if you will, leveraging their original platforms powered by diesel and other engines, are now moving towards electrification, and then we've been sourced on batteries for
Okay.
a large platform there. Then we've been announced with Motive. They're Motive Power Systems is a company here in California, manufacturing in Michigan. They were the first to source business to us. Then Bollinger was announced both passenger vehicle as well as a Class 3 truck,
Yep.
and they're in Michigan as well.
We
They've
know
sourced us.
Bollinger. Sure.
Yep.
Sure.
Yep.
Sure.
And then the final is Berkshire Hathaway Energy on the
The grid.
Aries Grid.
Okay.
Those are the ones that are announced. We think that more will allow us to announce, but what we do is we're
But
not
there
trying
are
to.
there are more.
There are more. Yeah,
Oh,
we
yeah,
have
of
Yeah.
we have
Yeah.
10 supply agreements right now to
Okay.
supply batteries. We just don't have the interest in pushing the customers beyond what they want to do in terms
Sure.
of announcements. And our goal in the market is to stably grow and not hype growth.
Right.
So our
Right.
thing is like
Smart.
we
That's
have,
smart. Yeah.
yeah, we have a kind of a moving forward business with commercial, grid, and then automotive, and the gigafactory that we announced in Michigan will come online at the end of next year, and that will help us as well.
So I guess my question would be like, who wouldn't want this technology? You know what I'm saying? Like, look.
Exactly. No,
Yeah.
just kidding.
Well, no. Look, I own a Rivian, right?
Yeah.
And I love my Rivian, and I've talked with our tall friend out there, and I was just like, so you're telling me it's conceivable that I could get a new battery that would effectively double or more the range of my Rivian? Like,
Yeah.
that's everything I want. That's the
Yeah.
only thing I don't like about it
Yeah.
is that maybe I'll have to charge it.
Yeah.
And like, who wouldn't want that? Like, what customer wouldn't want that?
Yeah, I think if we
Except for
offer,
cost.
yeah, if we offer exactly, if we offer a base range of in the neighborhood of what's offered today, 300 to 350 miles is the norm that you get on rated range, and then we offer a way to get to 600. My view is that that's the right premium feature of an electric car.
Right.
And I did an analysis of what Tesla offers today, and it's $10,000 per 100 miles is the cost structure of range. So in other words, there's a premium that you can buy more battery, but this is the kind of premium on range. And if you analyze that on 4 of their products that they offer, where they have more than one battery option, what
So
I think
what
will
you're
happen,
saying is 300 miles of range is a $30,000 proposition.
yeah, that and maybe it's the marketing teams of every car company will figure that out. But if you think about it, it's not inconceivable that customers would pay for range,
Sure.
because range is the premium feature of convenience, and people pay for convenience all the time.
Yes.
Your lifestyle is enabled without bothering. Now, let's say if I live in a college dorm environment, I definitely wouldn't want necessarily that whole 600-mile idea every single year. I could say I maybe never even did that. I might not do that. But then if I live from LA to San Francisco and I'm always stopping to charge twice or 3 times, I would definitely do that.
Right.
And so in the context of it, I think what will happen is we will offer 2 battery technologies or maybe 3 types of range offerings. And in the scalability of this technology, we think that we will be one of the companies uniquely positioned to offer the flexibility of range without the chemistry that runs the motor inverter being different. It's always iron phosphate. You could just take that to the bank and make that work. Then the range extender, which we've talked about as a chemistry that's anode free, can evolve from anode free into something else like rechargeable aluminum or copper fluoride or iron sulfide. There are many chemistries coming that are even better in energy density, but they typically have a life problem and they have a power problem.
Right.
But we're ready to handle those 2 problems with our range extender.
Okay. So that's a lot. I want to ask you something that I hope that is related to that, related to you. You always talk about Rivian,
No, just
but
for example.
but speaks to first of all where you've been and kind of where we started this whole conversation, which is when you talked about the Tesla, the getting the 600 miles or doubling the range, but including the noise factor. let's talk about our current 2023 MotorTrend Truck of the Year, the Ford F-150 Lightning.
Okay.
So I'm sure you've
I've
seen
driven
it,
it.
you've
Yeah,
driven it,
yeah,
you
yeah.
studied
Yep,
it. So,
yep.
we announced it. We think it's a great truck. We got eviscerated by commenters, some of whom actually own the truck and commented on a couple of things. Obviously, range performance is impacted when you tow, but then cold weather performance
Yeah.
has really been a tremendous issue. And then we now have our truck of the year in Michigan. Our technical director, Frank Marcus, he's a mechanical engineer. He's like, I hate this thing. It's the biggest problem is not only is it impacted by cold weather, it is poorly estimating your range. So
In
it's
cold weather.
in cold weather. So it's
Yeah.
telling you one thing, and then you get on the road, and then it just does not
Yeah.
delivering even close.
Yeah, which can get you in trouble with respect to your planning for sure.
Exactly. So as a former Ford engineer and somebody who worked on product, like how do you? And I don't know, you're probably not, don't want to criticize too much, but give us some pointers.
I'm back to no comment. I'm just kidding.
How would you approach?
You were doing great, Mujeeb. You were doing great.
How would you approach this problem? Because it is fundamentally the issue, and you kind of dance around it. You never want to overpromise and underdeliver. You're actually coming at the other way. You want to just people to be surprised and delighted
Yeah.
by what they're getting out of this.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
In other words, you're advertising 600. The thing did 752.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
So
I would say that towing is that kind of extreme condition where maybe the car companies are counting on the fact that if you tow for a living, you would realize that the electric vehicle is going to have limitations, and you would factor that into your thinking. There is a massive problem with this highway driving, though. The highway driving at 80 miles per hour and 0 degrees is not a really cold temperature
Right.
where you can lose 40, 50% of your range. Most people don't know that that's coming. Because actually, if you think about the gasoline vehicle market, city driving, you get worse fuel economy than highway driving. So everyone's expecting
Right.
that when I'm just cruising down the highway, it's going to be better.
Right.
And then I pulled a study, a Sacramento study, where 1 in 5 drivers have reverted back to a gasoline vehicle after driving electric vehicles because they got annoyed with the whole experience of a road trip.
Right.
And in the context of that, I think that trucks have a bigger burden because there's something physics related to frontal area. Trucks are big.
Huge. Yep.
And then drag coefficient.
Yep.
Trucks don't have typically good drag coefficient with beds and all of the turbulence in the rear. You can't quite make that perfectly aerodynamic where you can a sedan like a Model 3 can be really low drag.
Looks like a teardrop. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
So I think trucks have a burden. The third burden is tire rolling resistance.
Oh,
You
yeah.
have all 3 things working. The fourth is weight.
Yeah.
So in the fact that all these are working against you, and when you drive a drive cycle on a dyno, you're not going up a hill.
Right.
So now the moment you start going into grades, you go into temperature, you go into towing, or even just speed, the type of reductions that you can see in a truck can not just surprise you, but startle you. And I'll give you an example. I have a Rivian as well.
Good
I have
truck.
a Model Y, and let's say maybe I have a little bit. I have too many electric cars.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have all these different experiences.
Right.
And in my experience with towing, I was towing one time. I got to where
Towing with the Rivian.
I was towing. Actually, this case I was towing with a Model Y.
Okay.
Okay. I went to pick up a carriage for my daughter's wedding in a northern Michigan
Okay.
location. She's getting married, and I want to
Nice.
restore an old carriage from the early 1900s.
Wow.
And as I wrap this thing up with a tarp, I create like a big wind sail.
Right.
And as I start driving back, the vehicle has no idea how to predict what's going on.
Oh yeah.
Because it's like, I
What's
kind of
going-
feel like the watt hour per mile is going up, but I'm not sure what to do. So it just kept on telling me it told me range numbers that were not right.
Sure.
By so much that as I absolutely started observing what was going on, I calculated that, wait a minute, this thing's consuming 2.5 times the watt hours per mile normally that it consumes, that I won't even get back far enough to charge even with the nearest charging station. So I had to pull off, leave the trailer and the carriage,
Charge. Come back.
go and charge and come back.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that long of a trip. And then I realized, okay, the real condition that we have to study is towing. Because actually in the universe of boats and summer getaways, driving 100 miles with a boat behind you is definitely needed. Like
Yeah.
I definitely live in Michigan and we like to tow boats all the
Right.
time, and
Right.
not all the way up to the top or upper peninsula, but
No,
even
but
just
everybody has a
around.
lake house.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so
yeah.
I think that condition of towing should be met. And so we've started modeling our Gemini and like the worst, and we did a 12,000 pound towing event with our Gemini system. And we are now within stone throws distance of matching the diesel engine's version of range.
Heavy duty diesel or
Yes.
light duty? Heavy duty.
Heavy duty.
Huh.
Okay,
Well,
that's
let me look over here at my friend here.
they're not paying any
Yeah, he's
attention.
not
We've
paying
lost
attention.
them.
Yeah, what is this? This is a passenger,
Like a
it's truck.
3500.
Yeah, exactly.
I meant a
That's right.
1500 versus a super, like a
Oh, I
3500.
see. It would be heavy duty. Yeah.
Oh,
Super
wow.
duty, yeah,
Wow,
yeah.
because those can tow.
So in the context of what we were doing
Oh,
in the
wow.
simulation, is we want to match the range with enough energy on board, which is actually a lot of energy.
Yeah.
And then once you've done that, this vehicle's so robust against all the other noise factors. It can deal with temperature. It can deal with long distance driving. Then the thing that you start experiencing is that if your only condition is that when you tow, you have to start charging every 200 or 250 miles, that's okay.
That's fine because you stop
Because
anyways.
exactly.
Nobody tows
So,
that
so let's
long.
to recap. You've done some testing with that. Can you say what?
Not testing, simulation.
Oh, simulation.
And this,
Simulation.
this
So
is
we're-
with
what
the
we're trying to do is-
Gemini.
We're trying to simulate into a truck what would happen if we massively load energy, and how do we get to where we match the amount of range that a diesel vehicle would have. And we think that is a bar that if we can meet that, we're not quite there, but we think we're getting close.
But I
to
mean,
be able
look,
to meet that kind of range.
with the Gemini pack.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
if you're listening, like an unloaded heavy duty, if you just take a heavy duty, diesel pickup truck and drive it on the street, it's like 500 miles of range. You put a trailer on it, a heavy trailer, 12,000 pounds, which is why you get a heavy duty.
That's right.
That goes to about 250, 275 miles.
Yeah,
So
250 is what we were
okay,
thinking.
so yeah,
that's right.
because no one knows that. Nobody knows that if you're actually towing, your mileage is just like an electric. It's cut in half, but
Yeah.
you're cutting from 500 to 250
Yeah.
instead of
Okay.
300 to 150. Yeah.
We're almost at time, but I want to go through a quick lightning round here. We have Frank's questions to get through,
Oh,
which
yeah,
I'd like
yeah,
to
yeah,
do.
yeah.
But also, because
I have the final question.
okay, but we kind of missed. I want to make sure we don't miss one of the key points here, which is something Johnny actually talked about. Johnny late last year wrote an article called "You're Being Lied to About Electric Cars." I'm sure a bunch of people read it because it became in like 3 days the number 1 story MotorTrend's ever published. It was
Wow.
a hate read for a lot of people. He covered a lot of the basically the conjecture, the common
The fallacies.
fallacies.
I said the deck was, like science doesn't care about the meme you just retweeted. I just based my point was like EVs are 4 to 4.5 times more efficient than gasoline powered cars. That was the point
Right,
I made.
but-
And here's a Yale study. Here's a New York Times article which analyzes other thing.
A lot of the arguments against EV adoption is that it's not as clean as you think. It's all lies, and it's specifically related to the minerals
Yeah.
that are used.
Yeah.
Now, you guys are very clearly your focus is on LFP. Your
Yeah.
focus is on the anode free.
Yeah.
Can you just quickly summarize where we are? Because there's a lot of, but some of it is cost related. Oh, cobalt's crazy expensive. Where are we going to get all lithium? But a lot of that's changed. We found some new sources of it. Just can you quickly summarize where are we with
Minerals.
with minerals, rare
Yeah.
earth minerals? What are the costs? Where's the cost structure now?
Yeah.
But also the environmental. But also they call them blood minerals now.
Yeah.
Like they're all
Yeah,
being
yeah.
they're all
Cobalt.
being
They're just
talking about
cobalt.
the
cobalt.
So
DRC, yeah.
so 2023, a lot of things have happened in the last 12 months with respect to the availability of some of these minerals that you're not using.
Yeah.
But where are we?
Yeah, so 55% of cobalt's coming out of DRC.
The
in the global
Democratic
supply.
Republic of Congo.
That's right. And the mining practices have been documented and very well established as inhumane and
Horrible. Yeah.
yeah, just very
it's
terrible.
slavery. Yeah.
That hasn't
practices.
changed.
That hasn't changed.
Okay.
And then the exploitation, if you will, of human labor.
Okay.
Okay. Then the third factor is that new mine sources that are cobalt only don't take advantage of what current cobalt sources are leveraging, which is they're mining copper and getting cobalt as a byproduct.
Right.
Therefore, they're selling the cobalt at a different cost structure than you would if you tried to go after cobalt by itself. So there's a
cobalt,
bit
yeah.
of cost burden that's coming into now the cobalt specific mines that are being thought of. I think cobalt should just be avoided because I don't think that it's ultimately geographically diverse enough. So we decided to draw a line through cobalt and not
Okay.
use it. Now, in terms of the cost of energy needed to convert raw materials into battery materials, it's a pretty startling 30 times the energy output. Like, let's say I announce a 20 gigawatt hour factory. I need like 600 gigawatt hours to run that factory, to
Right.
make the batteries that are for 20 gigawatt hours. So in that 30-to-1 input output, you have to think a lot about the source of electricity.
Right.
And that's why I'm excited to work with Berkshire Hathaway on the Aries microgrid topic, is that we want a future where solar storage runs factories.
right.
When solar storage runs factories 24/7, it's decarbonized. Now, you have to figure out, okay, business-wise, can I afford that? Well, now it turns out you can, because it's cheaper than electricity from other other fossil sources. So I think we're going to head into a future where we need a business model development effort on how to get to decarbonized sources of energy to run factories that make these clean energy products, so that we don't actually invest so much carbon into making the battery that you're trying to help decarbonize the planet with.
But this is a great byproduct of the Inflation Reduction Act, is that
That's
by
right.
incentivizing car makers to use batteries built in the U.S., you can avoid Chinese dirty batteries.
You can avoid, you're starting to see a transitional
Right.
mindset, how you make energy and how you use it in automobiles. And I think the home, the car, and the office place are going to share a common resource. We charge at home, then we go to work and we charge again. Well, imagine a future where you charge at home overnight, maybe low cost. You go to work and the workplace has got this peak power area of like from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. They have run some part of their factory really hard. And the power company takes advantage of overcharging their bill because of that for the whole month. You can start reducing the peak by leveraging energy from cars.
Right.
And bidirectionality is coming. And so the car becomes a point of sale
right.
of energy.
So you can sell.
So now you're
energy
eating
to
lunch.
Your,
You're eating lunch and your car's earning your lunch for you, or
Yeah.
maybe even more than that.
Right.
And you're like pretty happy with that, because actually
Yeah.
the car's doing some work for you.
Right.
And when you go back home, you start that process again. And there's a connected building, connected infrastructure approach that I think is coming as well. The world is going to electrify all three of these subjects: the home and all of its offerings, then the car, all of its offerings, or transportation, and then building structures, meaning businesses. And in that transition, the better models that they're not just linearly thinking that a car is driving and using energy and it needs to charge everywhere it goes. It'll start donating energy as well where it goes.
Especially because you have a big battery.
That's right.
Oh, were there, before I get off the topic, any concerns regarding lithium, the availability? The Salton Sea is now seen as a big source.
Or somebody the other day, I just read, they said that maybe somebody, I was shocked.
Nevada's got a whole bunch.
No, I just read somebody said like maybe there's not enough lithium to actually meet our.
I read that
Who
too.
was that?
Yeah.
Who said that?
I'd rather not say, because I don't think it's right.
Yeah, I don't think it's right either. It was in
yeah.
the New York Times though.
Yeah. I think where my mindset is, there is enough lithium.
Yes.
We went into toilet paper syndrome. Toilet paper overbuying at the pandemic was absolutely a reaction to, I want to make sure that I don't run out.
Right.
Even
It
though
shows what humans value.
even though I didn't need more toilet paper, because
Right.
obviously the use of
Right.
toilet paper should stay consistent.
You would hope.
You would hope. The point being is that pandemic thinking was, I need to make sure I don't run out.
Hoard it.
And therefore lithium went through the same thing.
Right.
Now, as it starts to renormalize supply chain, there always has been a future view, and I've done a lot of work and study on this topic, that lithium is not an over-constrained material. It can be sort of sourced and is supply ready, and then recyclable. You can extract it and recycle it.
That's what people aren't getting. It really is. It's a metal, right? At the end of the day.
That's right.
So you can recycle it 99% or whatever.
So it'll come, maybe not back down to pre-pandemic, but it'll come back down to within reasonable margin. And then I think if we use iron and lithium and phosphate, those topics are not constrained.
Right.
And manganese is also not constrained. It's a
Okay.
very low cost metal.
Okay. Well, then here, and I need to do this really quick because we're way over, and then Johnny will get the last word here.
We're doing. This is a great conversation.
I did ask.
No time limit.
I asked our technical director Frank Marcus to prep some questions because he's more nerdy than I am. So we're going to ask you to handicap some of the other saviors in the battery arena that are going to cure our supply cost ethical mining issues. So sodium ion batteries.
Yeah. Energy density limited, meaning it's like iron phosphate, can't grow much better than that. And therefore, I think if you study Henry Ford carefully, he argued that mass was the driver for cost. It wasn't anything less and anything short of thinking that way, you would not get to low cost. So what I'm thinking about is super high energy density, meaning that we go up in energy density with Gemini, will drive cost faster than adopting a material like sodium ion versus lithium ion. So I think the substitution is not going to have as big a profound effect as if I work on doubling energy density and then doubling it again. That's what's going to be massively important. It's the dollars per kilogram that matter more than that sodium ion difference in material cost.
Okay. Shifting from graphite to silicon anodes.
Don't believe in silicon anodes at all. I think that it's like water freezes and cracks everything in its path. And if you think that you can avoid it, it's just a physics thing. You can't.
Right.
Silicon expands too much. It's kind of disastrous on the rest of the structure. I have tried to work with silicon for a decade, and there are a few examples I've seen that are clever, that are better than others. But my overall approach is it's too costly, and it's not worth the walk. What we did is we just deleted graphite and silicon and everything else, and we were just like, let's use the lithium, and that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Solid electrolytes. Will we ever see solid state batteries as a reality?
Solid electrolytes are, I'm not a massive fan of two topics. Their pressure to make all the materials intimate and then work together is so high, typically several 100 pounds per square inch of pressure is needed to make a solid state battery work, that I think that's a mechanical limitation. It's not great. I feel like also the manufacturing is very different. So inventing the technology and then also the manufacturing process is the process of scaling, and it could take like 6 to 7 years of like all the scaling to really get to efficiency. That's also in battery world a threatening amount of time because something can leapfrog in that period of time. So I've seen that time frame not be great. That's why we said let's drop the cycle life by 90% and the power by 90%. Keep the first battery the same always because we just know that it works. And invent the second one because you can qualify it quickly and keep climbing a ladder with that. I think solid state could be in the category of the 5 to 10 year to market all the time. Therefore, it's getting threatened by other technologies that can come along.
Interesting. Okay. This one I have no idea. Two more. Niobium as a stand-in for lithium in electrodes, with niobium titanium oxide structure promising 3 times the volume capacity.
Not knowledgeable enough to answer that question.
Me
I'll
neither.
talk to my CTO.
I can't even ask.
I never
no
try.
Yeah.
That whole thing about Apple teaching me don't guess.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
That's right.
And then lastly, could hybridizing battery packs be a good idea, combining different chemistries optimized for power and energy used under different conditions, or even incorporating new room temperature superconducting capacitors for power and cheaper battery chemistries for energy? It's kind of similar to the Gemini.
Yeah,
what
we
you did,
think
yeah.
hybridizing batteries is a kind of interesting way to go.
Okay.
But in the context of doing like a super cap, and then that's the power, and then the energy comes from somewhere else. The thing that we're trying to solve is really high energy batteries and more range. So as long as what you're doing in combining two things or more is extending energy density, it's lifting up energy density, then I'm in favor of it.
Okay.
And I'm not sure that I've seen supercaps ever lift up in energy density any technology that was otherwise not working. But if I ever found it to be true that you could get better energy density, I'd support that.
There's some of it in racing, right? There's some of these hybrid Le Mans cars are doing super capacitors.
In Formula
But
One, they do the cures, kinetic
Cures,
energy
right.
recover. That's right.
Well, the former, I don't know what they're doing now, but the previous LMP1 class was all super capacitor.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Toyota and everything.
And that's about braking, because you can gobble up massive energy braking and give it back again,
Right.
and accelerating, and kinetic energy recovery.
It just
was all
freaks
about
me
that.
out. Like you're in a car traveling 200 miles an hour with a thing holding an enormous amount of power that's available discharged like as quickly as possible. That just sounds.
Yeah.
Hey,
Well, supercaps are, let's say, charging something with electrons. You're investing electrons into a surface. It is exciting because you're not moving an ion. It's very fast. And then, but you have to find that mechanical thing that stores that isn't so heavy by itself. That's the problem with hydrogen tanks. The tanks are
Right.
heavy, and you don't you don't have good density. So capacitors have known to be really high power density, but also very, very low energy density.
right. All right. So here's my final question.
Great.
When can Ed and I drive this BMW with your battery in it?
when BMW gives us permission.
Oh boy.
But that's soon.
In terms of time,
Yeah, time. Yeah.
I would say that it wouldn't be too much longer than about another 3 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Great.
We'll call our local
I'm-
BMW rep.
No, we'll
Yeah.
call Nick.
But you'll have to talk to Nick. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Well,
Great.
my brain hurts.
No, this is
has been a
awesome.
really good
This is
one. I was
great, yeah.
scared. I was like, man, this guy's really
Yeah,
smart.
yeah. Ed was actually very scared. Ed was like, he's like, oh, I was going to study up on him, but I didn't. I'm like,
Well,
"No,
I have a 2-year-old, and
Yeah.
he kept me up from the time I was supposed to do research last night, 8:30 to midnight. I was like, what am I going to do? So I woke up and I asked Frank to send me all the questions he could. So, but this was great. I learned a lot.
Yeah.
Love to have you
Fun,
back
too.
on. Maybe after we drive the car, we can ask you all sorts of questions.
All right. That sounds
Yeah.
good.
Or the next major OEM announcement.
Yeah.
We'll have
Especially if
somebody
it's
in.
in the form of a pickup truck. That'd be
Yes,
quite
maybe.
interesting.
But Mujeeb Ijaz, founder, CEO of Our Next Energy. That's one.ai. If you want to go to their website, there's a bunch of actually, it's very easy to look at. There's examples. You click into the batteries tab. You can check out Aries 1, Aries 2, Gemini, and Aries Grid. I literally did that this morning. You can read all about some of their latest product there, and get inspired. So
Well, thanks a lot.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. It was
Yeah,
a lot of fun to
it
talk
was
to you guys.
fun. It was really
This
fun.
time went by really fast
Yes.
for
Yeah.
me as well.
Almost 2 hours.
thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right. Cheers.
Take care.